stories rise whispering, the echoes from the loam.
Welcome, wayward souls, back to Echoes from the Loam, where the ground remembers more than we do. And sometimes, if you listen closely enough, it whispers back. This story is one that clings to the edges of highways and riverbanks, a shadow perched just beyond the reach of headlights, a presence older than the bridges we build, and older than the towns that pretend not to see it. Before we descend into the dark, a small reminder: if these stories stay with you, if they settle in your bones the way they settle in mine, please take a moment to like, share and pass this along. It helps the echoes to travel, and it helps the loam remember. Now let's return to the river. Jace Mercer drives alone through the West Virginia backroads, the headlights pushing a narrow, trembling corridor of light ahead of him. The forest crowds close on either side, branches leaning inward as though the trees have grown curious about who dares to pass at this hour. Jace keeps glancing at the rearview mirror, not out of caution but out of instinct, and every so often he catches the impression of a shape in the back seat. Not of a person, not even of a silhouette, more like the suggestion of weight, the faint displacement of darkness, something that feels present even when it refuses to take form. He tells himself he's overtired. He tells himself the night plays tricks on anyone who spends too long in it. But none of those explanations settle. They just drift through him like cold drafts. The road curves, the trees thin, and the silver bridge rises ahead. A stark, skeletal outline against a sky with no stars. The structure looks less like engineering and more like the ribcage of something enormous that died standing. Jace's foot eases off the accelerator without conscious thought. There's nothing visibly wrong with the bridge, yet it radiates a kind of attention. A moth strikes the windshield, leaving a pale smear, and another follows, wings beating frantically against the grass. Then a sudden flurry, a scatter of pale bodies drawn toward the headlights in panic. There's something that feels less like instinct and more like an escape. Jace hits the brakes and the engine ticks in the silence that follows, each metallic click echoing too loudly in the stillness. He leans forward, peering through the dusted glass at the highest point of the bridge, and something stands there, tall, unnaturally narrow. A figure that looks like it was once human, but has been stretched past the limits of anatomy, as though someone pulled it upward until the idea of a body began to fray. Two dim points of red hover where I should be, fixed on him with a patience that feels older than the bridge itself. Jace blinks and the figure is gone. The moths stop hitting the windshield and the air settles, heavy and expectant. Jace tightens his grip on the steering wheel, breath shallow, and forces the car forward. The tyres roll onto the bridge and the metal beneath him groans. Not from strain, but from memory, as though it recognises the weight of somebody who should not be here. The tyres thrum over the first metal plate, and the sound is just wrong. It isn't the hollow clang that he expects, it's softer, almost damp, like the bridge is absorbing the sound instead of echoing it. He rolls forward at a crawl, the headlights skimming across the trusses, revealing patches of rust that look disturbingly like bruises. The air changes as he reaches the midpoint. It thickens. It's not any colder or any warmer, just denser, as if the atmosphere has been packed tight around him. His ears pop, and the steering wheel vibrates under his hands. A faint tremor that doesn't match the engine's rhythm. Jace kills the engine, and the sudden silence is enormous. He steps out of the car, boots landing on the metal with a muted thud. The bridge should sway slightly with the movement, but it doesn't. It feels rigid, as if it's bracing itself. A single moth drifts past his face, its wings tattered, dust trailing behind like ash. It circles once, and twice, and drops to the ground at his feet, still twitching. Jace crouches. The moth's wings pulse faintly, as though something inside is trying so hard to push its way out. The river below is black and slow, reflecting nothing. Not the moon, not the sky, not even him. He takes out his inspection torch and sweeps it along the underside of the nearest beam. The light catches on deep scratches carved into the metal. Long, parallel gouges that run the length of the support. A corrosion. Something deliberate. Something that understood the structure well enough to know exactly where to mark it. Jace leans in closer and sees the scratches aren't random. They form a pattern, a kind of looping geometry that makes his eyes ache. The lines seem to shift when he looks away, as though they're rearranging themselves into something that wants to be read. A low vibration hums through the soles of his boots. He straightens, scanning the trusses above him. Nothing moves, but the sense of being watched is no longer subtle. It presses against the back of his neck, like a weightless hand hovering just above the skin. Jace turns slowly, torch beam slicing through the dark. At the far end of the bridge is swallowed in shadow, the kind of darkness that feels inhabited. He takes a step towards the car, and the metal beneath him groans. Jace freezes on the spot, and the bridge holds perfectly still. He forces himself to take a breath and reaches for the car door. But before his fingers touch the handle, something shifts high above him. But not a movement, a displacement of space, a subtle bending of the air, as though something enormous has just leaned in closer. Jace doesn't look up. He can't. Every instinct in him screams that if he sees what's there, he won't be able to look away again. He keeps his eyes fixed on the car door handle, and the air around him feels stretched far too thin. A faint creak travels down the length of the bridge. Not the groan of metal under strain, but the slow, deliberate shift of weight. Something adjusting its position. Jace's pulse hammers in his throat, and he forces his fingers to close around the door handle. And the moment he touches it, the pacing stops. Jace stands perfectly still, hand frozen on the handle, breath shallow. Silence isn't empty, it's listening. A thin strand of dust drifts down from the truss overhead, almost luminous in the beam of his torch. It spirals lazily through the air. It's moth dust, but heavier, as if it came from wings far larger than any moth should have. He forces himself to look at the dust on his sleeve. The particles shimmer faintly, shifting in a way that makes his skin crawl, like they're alive. A soft exhale brushes the back of his neck. Not his imagination, but breath. Warm, measured, and close enough that the tiny hairs along his spine lift in response. Jace doesn't turn, though every instinct in his body screams that turning around is the one thing he should do. The breath lingers for a moment and withdraws, as though the thing behind him is leaning back to study him from a different angle. Jace's torch flickers, but in that single flicker, the shadows around him seem to completely rearrange themselves, stretching into shapes that don't belong to the bridge. The torch steadies, and the shapes remain. He backs towards the car door, moving as quietly as he can, and the bridge vibrates underfoot, a subtle rhythmic tremor, almost like a heartbeat, but not his heartbeat. Jace opens the car door and the hinges scream a sharp metallic shriek that tears through the silence, and above him something reacts. A sudden and absolute stillness, so complete it feels like the entire structure has frozen mid-breath. Jace slips into the driver's seat, slams the door and locks it with shaking hands. The interior of the car feels too small now, like a thin shell that won't protect him from anything that wants to get in. He fumbles for the keys and the engine refuses to turn over. Once, twice, a grinding choke as though something is gripping the underside of the car. Jace's breath fogs at the windshield, and in the fog a shape begins to form. Tall, narrow, and two dim red points hover where its eyes should be. The red points on the windshield don't blink. They don't brighten, they don't dim, they just simply exist, as though the creature behind them has all the time in the world. Jace's breath fogs the glass again, and the shape in the mist sharpens. Long limbs folded too close to the body, shoulders hunched in a way that suggests wings held tight against a frame should not be able to stand upright. The engine coughs once more, a wet choking sound, and falls silent, and Jace's fingers tremble on the keys. He knows not to try again. The air inside the car is almost metallic, and a faint vibration hums through the chassis. Outside, the figure leans closer. The red point shifts slightly, angling downwards, studying him with a focus that feels clinical. He's heard the stories. Everyone in Point Pleasant has, even if they pretend otherwise. A creature with wings like stretched shadow, eyes like burning coals. A presence that appears before disaster, not to cause it, but to witness it, to mark it. A warning, an omen, a watcher. The folklore whispers through his mind unbidden. Those who see it are already part of the story. The red points drift closer to the glass, not moving forward, just simply appearing nearer. The fog on the windshield shifts from the outside. A long, thin streak appears in the condensation, a line drawn by something dragging a fingertip or a claw or something that has never been human. The streak curves downward, then hooks sharply and loops back up. The symbol. Jace stares at it, heart pounding. The shape is unfamiliar, but something about it feels old. Older than the bridge, than the river, than the town itself. A looping, spiralling mark that echoes the scratches he saw carved into the metal beams. Whatever this is, it's writing, communicating. The red points rise slightly as though the thing is straightening itself, and the shadow behind the glass expands, stretching upward until it fills the entire field of view. A towering silhouette with wings that unfurl just enough to brush the edges of the windshield. Jace's vision blurs at the edges, and a hum that grows stronger, pulsing in a rhythm that feels disturbingly familiar, like a heartbeat. A heartbeat that seems to sync with the tremors in the bridge, with the river's slow churning, with the moth dust still clinging to his sleeve. And then the folklore whispers again. It comes when the world is about to change. It comes for those who will not survive the remembering. The hum stops and the red points vanish. The windshield is empty and the bridge is silent. The car sits motionless in the dark, surrounded by a stillness so complete it feels like the world has paused. Jace doesn't dare move. He can't tell if the creature is gone or has just simply stepped somewhere he can't perceive it. The symbol on the glass glistens faintly as though still wet. Jace sits frozen in the driver's seat. The symbol traced in the fog gleams faintly, as though lit from within. He wipes at it with his sleeve, but it doesn't smear, it doesn't fade, it clings to the glass like it's etched into the surface. Jace's breath stutters and he tries the engine again, and this time it turns over immediately. The sudden roar of the engine feels intrusive, almost disrespectful in the suffocating quiet. The headlights flare and the bridge reacts. The metal beneath the tyres vibrates. More like shaking, responding to the engine's noise, waking from a sleep. Jace grips the wheel and the trusses above him creak. Not from wind or weight, but from something shifting along their length. A ripple of movement passes through the structure, subtle but unmistakable. He puts the car in gear and he eases the car forward. The headlights sweep across the beams, revealing something new. The scratches that he saw earlier have multiplied. They run along the length of the trusses in looping, spiralling patterns, but now they're deeper, fresher, as though carved moments ago. And the folklore whispers through his mind once again. It marks the places where the world will break, and it marks the people who witness it. The car rolls forward another metre, and the bridge groans. It's not the sound of collapse, but the sound of memory. The silver bridge remembers. It remembers the weight of bodies, the snap of cables, the plunging into the river, the screams swallowed by cold water. And then something else. Something that watched it happen. Something that stood on the highest truss as the bridge fell, wings unfurled, eyes burning like coals in the winter dark. The folklore is clear on one point. Mothman does not cause disaster. It arrives to witness it, to herald it, and to mark those who will not escape it. Jace's hands tighten on the wheel, and the hum beneath the car deepens. The symbol on the windshield pulses again faintly. And for a moment, just a moment, he sees the bridge not as it is, but as it was. Cables snapping like gunshots, metal twisting, cars sliding sideways into the void. And above it all, a silhouette with wings stretched wide, watching with those unblinking red eyes. The vision fades, the bridge is whole again, but the hum continues. The symbol glows, and Jace understands with a clarity something that chills him to the marrow. The Mothman didn't appear to warn him or to remind him. It appeared because he's already a part of what's coming. Jace eases his car forward, inch by inch. And the moment the car touches asphalt, the hum beneath him stops. Jace doesn't breathe again until he's several meters clear of the structure. And only then does he pull over, hands shaking, headlights cutting a pale wedge into the trees. The forest around him feels expectant, as though every branch is leaning in to listen to him. Jace steps out of the car and the gravel crunches under his boots, loud enough to make him flinch. And the sound doesn't echo, it just stops dead, swallowed by the darkness. He turns back towards the bridge, and from this angle the structure looks skeletal. The trusses vanish into shadow at the midpoint. It's nothing but a black void. Jace lifts his torch, but the beam reaches only halfway across the span before it dissolves into the darkness. The feeling of being watched intensifies. Not from one direction, but from all of them. A pressure at the back of the skull, a prickle along the arms. A sense that the darkness is full of eyes, and none of them are blinking. Listeners, I'm sure you can feel it too. That subtle tightening in the chest. That instinctive urge to turn around even though you know nothing is behind you. Jace's breath fogs in the cold, and he steps backwards towards the car. And the forest responds. Branches shift, leaves tremble, and something large passes silently between trunks. Jace raises his torch again, and the beam catches a sheep for the briefest moment. And the folklore whispers through him like a memory he never learned. It won't stay on the bridge. It follows the marked. A moth lands on his shoulder. Not fluttering or struggling, just resting. Its body trembling. Another lands on the bonnet of the car, and then another, and more drifting down from the treetops like pale, silent snow. They gather around him, on him, near him, as if drawn to something he carries now. Swallowing hard, he opens the car door, and the moths don't move. They simply watch him with their tiny glass eyes, hundreds of them reflecting the torchlight. And for a moment it feels like the entire forest is holding him in its gaze. The symbol on the windshield pulses faintly, and for the first time Jace feels certain of something. He didn't leave the watcher on the bridge. It left with him, and it's watching you too. Anyone who hears this story, anyone who imagines the bridge, anyone who feels the weight of those red eyes in the dark. Some folklore says the Mothman marks the witnesses, Others say it marks survivors, but the oldest stories, the ones that are whispered, not written, say this: once you know it's real, it knows you're real too. Jace drives into Point Pleasant, with the symbol still faintly glowing on the windshield. The town is quiet. The streets are mostly empty. And Jace pulls into the parking lot of a small diner, the only place that had any lights on. The neon sign flickering, buzzing faintly. He steps out of the car, and the moment his boots hit the ground, he feels it again. That pressure, that prickle, that sense of being watched. A figure stands at the far end of the street, half hidden in shadow. He turns towards the diner and heads in. Inside, the air is warm, thick with the smell of coffee and grease, and a single waitress stands behind the counter, wiping down a mug that doesn't need wiping. She looks up as he enters, and her eyes go straight to the symbol on his windshield. Her face visibly drains of colour. She doesn't ask what happened, if he's okay. She doesn't even greet him. She just says, "You saw it." The waitress sets the mug down with trembling hands, glances towards the windows, afraid something might be looking in. "Follows the marks," she says. "Always has." Jace opens his mouth to speak, but she shakes her head. "Don't say its name. Not in here." A man sitting in a booth near the back, someone Jace hadn't even noticed, stands abruptly and leaves through the side door without even paying. Keeps his head down the entire time. And the waitress leans in closer. "You need to leave town before dawn. Once the sun comes up, it will know exactly where you are. It always knows." Jace glances towards the window, and the figure at the end of the street's gone. The feeling of being watched is stronger now. But not from outside. Somewhere inside the diner. A presence pressing against the edges of the room. The waitress steps back, eyes wide. "You brought it with you." The lights flicker, the sign outside buzzes louder, the red glow pulsing. Jace turns towards the door. The symbol on the windshield flares for just a moment, but bright enough to cast a faint red reflection across the diner floor. Jace steps outside. The air's cold, the kind of cold that feels like it's coming from the inside of your bones. And somewhere in the dark, wings shift. And all of you feel it too. That subtle tightening in your chest. That instinctive urge to look over your shoulder. That sense that something tall and patient is standing just out of your vision. Watching. Jace drives away from the diner. The streets of Point Pleasant feel narrower now, as though the buildings are leaning inwards. Every window he passes seems to hold a shadow that wasn't there before. He doesn't know where he's going until he's already there. The river. The Ohio moves slow and heavy in the dark, its surface thick as oil, swallowing reflections of streetlights. The air along the riverbank is colder than the rest of town and carries a metallic tang, like old blood or rusted steel. Jace steps out of the car, and the symbol on his windshield pulses once more, faintly as though acknowledging the place. He walks towards the water, the gravel shifting under his boots, but the sound is swallowed instantly. And a shape stands near the shoreline. An old man, hunched, wrapped in a heavy coat that looks older than he is. Jace hesitates, and the man speaks first. "You saw it." They all think it's a monster, he murmurs. Wings, eyes, height, all the details they cling to because it's easier than the truth. Jace steps further. What truth? And the man finally turns. His eyes are pale, washed out, the colour of river fog, but they're sharp. It's not a creature, the man says, it's a consequence. The man gestures towards the river. You know what lies beneath this water. Not the bridge, not the cars, not the bodies. Memory. The river remembers everything it takes. And long before the silver bridge fell, people saw it. Not just here, all along the river, every time the world was about to crack. They say it comes before disaster, but that's not quite right. It comes when disaster is already woven into the world, when the threads have been pulled too tight and when something just has to give. The man's gaze drops to the faintly glowing symbol on the windshield. And when it marks someone, there's no undoing it. The river churns, a slow, heavy roll, as though something vast has shifted beneath the surface, and Jace steps back. A man doesn't follow him. People think the Mothman warns us, but warnings are for things that can be avoided. This can't. A cold wind rises from the river, carrying with it the faintest sound. The man closes his eyes. It's close. Closer than it's been in years. When it watches you, it's not seeing who you are. It sees what's about to happen to you. Jace freezes and the river goes still. And somewhere above the tree line, something shifts. You feel it too, don't you? That subtle pressure, that tightening in your chest, the sense that something enormous has just turned its attention to you. Jace doesn't remember deciding to return to the bridge. One moment he's staring at the river, the old man's words echoing through him like a pulse, and the next he's driving back through the sleeping town. The symbol on the windshield glowing steadily now. And the closer he gets, the heavier the air becomes. Jace stops the car at the foot of the bridge. The night is silent. The bridge looms ahead, its trusses rising like ribs, its cables humming with tension. Jace takes a step forward and the metal beneath his boot vibrates, a low resonant tremor. And the symbol on his windshield pulses in time right along with it. The trusses above him creak, not from strain but anticipation. And halfway across the span he stops. The river below is no longer black. It glows faintly, a sickly reddish shimmer rising from the depths. And a sound rises from the far end of the bridge. A low rhythmic thrum. A pulse. A heartbeat. Something vast. And the trusses above him vibrate in time with it. The entire structure resonating like a tuning fork. For a moment, the bridge is not a bridge, but a spine. A rib cage. A skeleton of something ancient stretching across the river like the remains of a titan. And perched at the highest point of that arc, it appears. Wings folded tight against a frame that bends the rules of anatomy. The Mothman, the Harbinger, the Watcher. It tilts its head. The movement is slow, deliberate, and Jace just can't breathe. The creature unfurls its wings with a slow, fluid motion, like smoke rising from a fire, and the heartbeat in the bridge intensifies. and the river roars, and the glow beneath the surface brightens, swirling upwards in a spiral that mirrors the symbol. And the creature leans in forwards, but not towards Jace, to the bridge, towards the memory, toward the echo of catastrophe. Jace understands. It's not here to warn, it's here to witness. Suddenly the bridge shudders, and a cable snaps somewhere behind him. Jace stumbles and the creature's eyes flare. The bridge tilts. The river surges upwards, though something beneath is rising to meet the collapse. Jace grips at the railing, knuckles white breath ragged, and the creature spreads its wings wider. The bridge groans one final time, and then everything goes silent. Jace lies on the cold metal of the bridge. He doesn't remember falling. He doesn't remember the moment the world tilted. He only remembers those eyes. Those dim, ember-red eyes. He pushes himself upright and the bridge is still intact. No twisted beams, no snapped cables, no collapse. And the river churns below in slow spirals. Jace staggers to his feet and the creature's gone. Just gone. But its presence lingers in the air, like a static. He looks down at his hands and moth dust clings to his palms, his sleeves, the front of his jacket. And the symbol on the windshield glows steadily from where the car sits at the far end of the bridge. The folklore whispers through him again, but this time it doesn't feel like memory. It feels like revelation. Mothman does not warn, it marks. And once marked, you are part of the remembering. The symbol on the windshield pulses once more as Jace opens the door. And the interior is cold, but not winter cold or river cold, something deeper. A cold that feels like it comes from the absence of something. He sits behind the wheel. The headlights flare as he starts the engine, and in that brief flare he sees it. A silhouette. Wings folded tight. Eyes red and dim. He blinks and the silhouette's gone, but the feeling remains. That pressure at the back of your skull. That prickle along your spine. Jace drives off the bridge. The river settles, the night exhales, but the watcher does not leave. In the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the moments when the world goes still, in the dark behind closed eyes, and you will feel it too. That subtle creeping awareness that something has shifted in the room around you. The air is heavier, the shadows deeper, that feeling that you're no longer alone. Because once you hear the story, once you imagine that bridge and picture those eyes, it knows you're real. And it remembers you. And that was tonight's descent into the dark. A reminder that some stories don't end when the telling does. They settle in the quiet corners of the room, waiting for the lights to go out. And if this tale followed you, if you felt the weight of those eyes, in the places where the night grows deep, share this story along. For stories like this travel best by word of mouth. And sometimes the things that watch us listen too. So until next time, keep your eyes on the tree line, keep your back to the river, and your footsteps light on the old bridges, because the lone remembers, and some echoes will follow you home.